it's been really, 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 really full. And now I finally have that feeling of like between chapters. Like I don't know if I said this last week too, but like I really feel yesterday and today kind of like that chapter is now, that page is turned and the next page is not turned yet, in between the two chapters, and it's a good place.
Do you know what the names of those chapters might be, just for a little context?
Well, maybe the previous chapter is not just one chapter, it's like a bunch of chapters, so it's go to India at the age of 20 and go back again as soon as college is over and end up staying for 20 years, more or less. I mean, nomadically, but based there, and start teaching meanwhile, and keep traveling all over the place, a different country every month, teaching, and then just keep on rolling through with babies and diapers, washing and hanging on the line, and breastfeeding through the night, and making up stories at midnight, and doing a Dharma talk the next day, and doing one-to-ones in the truck so my son can play with the steering wheel, and continue, then managing to somehow fit school in, keep on traveling and teaching a lot, and then stop feeling like traveling at the simultaneously with COVID lockdown, tons of online, great, fantastic, and then suddenly not anymore, and sabbatical, and more art meanwhile creeping in, less energy for being so packed in my schedule, and then like sabbatical, like this discovery of like loosely letting life unfold and still getting so much done and being so creative and productive, but loosely, like with, and easily, and just like, wow. And then finding life pulling me back into action, with the books, and then the traveling to see family, and also simultaneously starting to teach again in person, then finishing the books. But all of that feels like that could just be like the normal, I don't know, some bones that can be part of a new organism that might look and move really, really differently, or it might be the same as before. I have no idea. But I'm different.
Yeah.
And I like being different in this way. And so I was going to say I'm curious. I'm actually in this moment, I'm not very curious actually about how it's going to look, like how it's going to end up taking shape, because I'm just feeling good being in the midst of like that seam, limbo seam. I love limbo. So,
well, how apt we're here to talk about the book, and you are, in between
that's true.
those pages.
Also, kind of like, what is a book for? Like, what is a book for? People were like, well, who are you writing it for? And that kind of thing. It's like, I have no idea. This is happening.
Yeah.
I don't have a plan. I don't have a, whatever it's called, an agent. I don't have a publisher. I don't have an audience in mind, particular, other than like, yeah, everyone I know, I think would enjoy this book. But beyond that, when they talk about making a book, they say you should, first things first, figure out which section in the bookstore it should go in. And that's just like it should go in several sections in the bookstore. It should go in art. It could go in a graphic novel, maybe. It could go in Dharma, meditation, spirituality. It could go in maybe even children's. I don't know. Kids seem to like it. It's not really aimed at kids, but so far the few kids that have seen it like it. It was so interesting. On Sunday, I had my first art show since I was in college. So that's a long, like 30 something years. And 35 years. No, 30 something years. And I had still the one, just this proof copy. That's all I have, still. I had it there with the art. And I managed to do, oh my God. I managed to do a print of this one. I don't know if it's going to show well.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Wow. Oh, wow.
Because actually, Gemma has seen the proof. And she also saw the PDF because I sent it to her
Mm-hmm.
to write a review. And she was like, you should do prints of some of those. And you know the one I want? And she showed me this one. So that's her Christmas present. um,
Great.
and I realized the photography studio who printed my
Mm-hmm.
photos for the show could print the Gertrudes on thick matte paper, this beautiful matte paper. And at first they didn't have any. They didn't know they were going to get any of this paper that they showed me as samples, but then, oh, we don't have it. And I was like, oh, well. But then I was like, oh, well, whenever you get that, I want to try this. And then they had it. And I love it. It came out so nice. It looks really like an actual like printing press
Yeah.
print. And they're really so nice. There's like two people in this photography studio, and they're both like friendly and really great, like and great input and
Yeah.
collaboration. And it's like, wow, what a great discovery. So they just did two um, samples on different paper for me without my asking to, because they weren't sure the black would come out as
Yeah.
a thing in printing. Apparently,
Yeah.
came out great. Anyway, so what I was saying
Hard.
was having my art all hang, not all of it, but like some pieces, about 20 pieces hanging from one monotype print from 19 like maybe 88 or so up till something that I did last year or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, and photos from decades ago in India and photos from 2 years ago in Canada. So like I'm definitely in 20 pieces, 30 years, 35 years,
Well,
whatever. Um, cool. So it was so interesting to see the two people who most mentioned to me how much they liked Gertrude were these two older men.
mm,
I wouldn't, because one guy friend of mine said, "Oh, when I talked about this book a few years ago, he's like, oh, so you're right, you're doing that for women, right? You're doing it for like people who identify as female."
mm,
And I was like, "Oh, I get okay, whatever. I don't know who I'm doing it for, but yeah."
interesting.
Even though like my brother loves Gertrude and is very supportive, there
I think,
it was just a comment that sunk
yeah.
in, and I noticed that I'm not aiming it towards as I said, a particular demographic,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see why he would think that one guy friend would kind of think that way. And I just had that kind of registered in my mind, that not to expect people who identify as male to relate.
What I think is interesting about moments like that, though, is that it it could be something that that particular person was maybe recognizing or wanting to know more about himself in that moment, and
Mm, mm,
much more than it applies to anybody else, even on Earth, that he was wondering about
yeah,
what was
yeah,
coming up, what Gertrude was bringing up for him, and whether he wanted to be
yeah,
close to it or was nervous about it or something. Yeah,
totally. That's so apt.
yeah.
Yeah, very apt. Yeah. So that was just such a cool revelation. One is a neighbor who's like probably some 70 something, um, who's, I don't know how to describe him, but I would never have imagined, and he was not just being nice. He was
Mm,
like actually describing what he liked. He was like, it's in Catalan, so to kind of translate, but like, it was like the fluid
yeah.
lines, like, you don't want to use pencil so you can erase. And I'm like, no, it's the pen, it's
Mm-hmm.
the ink. And the way the ink is so black, and yet when it's also actual ink,
Mm,
and so it's not just like a digital black line that's all black. It's got grays in it
yeah.
that we've tried to keep. And he was picking up on all of that and talking about, like, immediately talking about it. And he was looking through page by page of the book. I was like, oh, I don't want to keep you here from the rest of the show. And he's like, no, no. And the other one was the guy who used to be the mayor of the village,
Mm,
apparently, before I came here for a long
yeah.
time, that I haven't had much connection with. And he's like, usually I see him on the tractor. Occasionally he'll give us a ride to the river, and he's going down to water his sunflowers, like fields or whatever, check on them from the wild pigs or something. Like a total, countryside, but also like if he was the mayor, he was into like power brokering in this, at least in a small village kind of way.
Yeah.
And he was just like, with the poster especially, he was just like, it's really impactful, you know, really like, and I was just like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah. So even though the book is not here, it was cool to share the one copy that I have with this unexpected range of people, and yeah, have it kind of breathe.
I keep being struck by a couple of things as you're talking. One of them is that your maybe it's not the word surprise, but your animation at the way it's impacting people. And I think that you keep talking about how it isn't here, and I just want to talk about the title really quickly, if we can, on the heels of that,
Yeah.
because I want to know why it's called
Already here.
and I want to know if you know, and I want to know maybe a little bit of backtracking. If she first started showing, when did Gertrude, when was she born? Like, when did she
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
into, at what point in the timeline of all that art that you showed, right? Was she emerging?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's one of the few pieces of art that I couldn't really tell you actually the date.
Yeah.
I would have to look up the actual date, but it was in July 2017.
Okay.
And I had moved back to India and was visiting during summer break in Spain for a short, well, for a month or something,
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks, because the school holidays are different there from here. And so, and I was struggling with the decision of whether to just go back to India for a short time and close up shop and come back to
Mm-hmm.
Catalonia and give up my community there. I mean, community sounds like a commune, just my like chosen family, we could say, or that also sounds like I don't love my actual family, but like the people that I was loving being with,
Yeah.
and it was very much home like and supportive being there. But also, the way I summarized the whole thing was that the previous year to that, India kicked my butt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, it was not working.
Mm-hmm.
And there are the things you can really list, like the air pollution was almost always in the date, not just like, you know, yellow or orange, but like orange, dark orange, red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not just risky for people with asthma, but like bad for
Yeah.
everybody. And the house I was in, there were windows that just didn't have any glass in
Mm-hmm.
them. You know, there was not like you could do that. I'm not that I would want to just like hunker inside
Yeah.
and people put like tape around the windows and just stay inside. I wouldn't want to do that. But as one
Yeah.
example. And then the air pollution meant that there was not really sunshine. It's just like smog, 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 smog. During the months that used to be so lovely
Yeah.
with like clear, bright, sunny, and bearable or lovely temperatures. Um, and then the illnesses that the whole household had gone through and everything. Anyway, not to mention all the paperwork of the immigrant, being an immigrant and
Mm-hmm.
everything. It was just, and I had broken my ankle. It was just awful. It didn't work. And so I mentioned that in the introduction, actually. I go through how that all happened, that for my entire adult life before that, I'd never planned to live in India.
Yeah.
But when I made the plan and set everything, made all the arrangements like so properly to live there, it just kicked my butt.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't work.
Yeah.
So accepting that and what that meant, it was going to be like, to be that, then I knew. And what happened next is I underwent, like underwent is a really good word for a kind of trial or a like time of a very hard passage.
Yeah.
Very hard passage in Catalonia. So there's not the pollution, etc. But I had no, zero. I had zero human connection other than my
Mm.
kids, who I didn't have all the time because of sharing custody. So just to begin with. Anyway, so Gertrude popped up while I was like, if it's like step by step, we were in India, but I went to visit for summer holidays to then go back supposedly to my life in India, but then like teetering there, like, actually, it's not going how I had planned.
Yeah.
And then, so she just came in time,
Yeah.
you know. And it was so curious because it was just a simple exercise from Ivan Burnetti's book on cartooning.
Mm.
Make a character from simple shapes.
Yeah.
But like I just did that, and it was like magic. It was like a living creature there. It was like, and then the thing was now draw that same character doing different things from different angles in motion. You know, so there's this page full of Gertrude, baby Gertrude. She really came out like a baby, like small and more round and small,
Mm-hmm.
and but she had gumption from the very beginning, and that's what I needed. Really, she was like a space for me where there's vulnerability and tenderness, but also power and decisiveness and kind of grounded, like. And it's also something I'm coming to appreciate about art because after the show on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
a friend who came to help me put thing or basically to accompany me, but she ended up helping me hang and unhang the art, and then we hung it in my house,
Mm.
which is also so funny because I this house, it doesn't have a lot of obvious wall space to hang art because a lot of it is just rough stone with like crumbling cement in
That's
between or
beautiful.
something between, and yeah, like
Yeah.
this, which this is even the least crumbly of the walls, but actually there is enough wall space for all that art to be
Wow.
up if I want. And so I have it up just since yesterday. And I'm like, I also was kind of like why a book? Like, why my art on the wall? You
Yeah.
know, like I made it. It's kind of in me. I know it. It's familiar, but like, it's really different having it up. Maybe something about to honoring
Mm.
that or something. But it also allows some kind of different resonance, like to have it there. And I'm really feeling the embodied way that I do everything, but the way that I do art, especially, it's not. One of my neighbors asked, like, so she saw this one abstract piece and I could see she was not relating to it. And she's like, so what do you all, you artist types, what's your process? Like, what makes you do that?
Mm.
You know, what are you thinking? I'm like, well, I'm not actually thinking, that's the whole point. But so it's like this, like embodying and then the expression that comes from, or centering in alignment and then the expression that comes from there. The embodiment happens on the page somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's Gertrude, like she has something like a recognizable body and something really can resonate and come
Yeah.
across without words. And so that's part of also why the title already here. I mean, maybe why is not quite the right word, but one reason that the title already here
Yeah.
fits is that capacity of human beings to be embodied
Mm-hmm.
and letting the body be a help for centering in something beyond the body
Mm-hmm.
that's already here, that allows an expression that we can resonate with,
Mm-hmm.
it's like happening from somewhere behind any thinking or
Mm-hmm.
even imagination. Actually, it's not usually like imagining something and then copying the imagination, but just like bloop,
Yeah.
something that's already here that I don't know that it's here, or that we don't know that it's here until it kind of happens. The expression comes forth and then can be recognized.
Yeah.
And so that capacity is already here. Where that comes from is already here. The ability to resonate with something
Mm-hmm.
that is embodied is already here. What we need is already here. What we're longing for is already
Yeah.
here. You know, like our greatness is already here. Our tenderness is already here. We don't have to implant something from outside. We have the chance in this precious lifetime to discover.
Mm-hmm.
uncover, 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 like petal by petal, like how to let that flower rather than, that let it show to us, let it feel in us.
Already here.
Yeah.
I'm letting that soak in a little bit.
And the work, I mean, that the work people want, sometimes are attracted to, like, okay, something hard to do, like climb Mount Everest or something. And what's hard that there is to do is the centering and the trust, like the centering in what's already here, and the trust that even though I don't feel complete, I really know I'm not perfect, but that something is already here that is trustworthy, and being with that, and the kind of humbleness and confidence of being that, not just being with it, but being that. And being that in the world emanates something, makes a difference. And it's not a hubris thing of like, there's such a humbleness involved. And also it's very humbling because it's hard to stay with how powerful it is when we're in our tenderness, rather than getting armed so that we can feel strong and act and show strength, to be in what's powerful that's already here, in a way that doesn't add anything more, but leaves room for that to move, is challenging and so good. And rearranging things,
rearranging things inside, energetically,
inside and outside. Yeah.
What I'm picturing as you're saying that tenderness is like opening your eyes, and there's like bright light. It's like you want to be there. You want the light to be illuminating. It's just like there's a moment, and maybe that moment lasts, where the vulnerability of like taking the eyelids away is like, I don't know if I can right now, but you can, and it just takes that. It takes that time.
That's a good metaphor.
Just what was coming up.
Yeah.
Sticking with it.
And equally the opposite, like the dark, like there's nothing here, but then when you stay longer, the eyes adjust and find, if we would even say, like looking at the night sky, which is such a great metaphor for what's already here, that at first there's only one star or whatever, and then slowly the eyes adjusting, and that moment of like taking that in, or letting ourselves be taken in to that, is similar to what you're saying of like, it's too bright.
So I'm wondering about how similar Gertrude is, or different maybe than you, or a part of you, or like where does she come from in you, or is she wholly separate? And does she match your mood ever? That's a question I've always had.
Yeah, she does sometimes match my mood. There are some that are specifically me moments. Like there's one, I was in my garden a year that I had just tons, like a miniature forest of basil in the summer. And I was here in the summer because it was a COVID summer. And I was like harvesting basil, and it just using whatever I was wearing, I guess, to like pile it up, because I thought I'll just get a little to make pesto to then have frozen, into the winter. And just the fragrance was so good. So there's one that was that came straight from there. I wouldn't say that it's me, but it definitely came from my experience. Or another one with a leaf falling, that came from just being stopped. I was just walking past a window and saw a leaf, and it's also like that experience, that one moment with the leaf that paused me, but then also all the moments. And even one time a friend told me about being on retreat in India one time, and being well into a good rhythm on the retreat. And what can happen when you're meditating a lot is being more rested, and maybe being quietly awake in the silence of the night. And in India, that's really noticeably different when things quiet down, and it's even not that late, but like 10, 11 p.m. if there's not a wedding party next door. It's like the really qualitatively quite different. And he just described like leaves falling and just kind of being stilled.
Mm.
And so that's there too. So there's something about like commonality, like human, like experiences that are specific,
Mm-hmm.
but also shared. And so there's there's several in there of one friend, for example, who was with her mother while her mother was dying.
Mm-hmm.
She was taking care of her mom, and I remember I was sitting in my car and I was listening. We were talking, but I was listening, and I drew two of the Gertrudes that are in the book just in a notebook on my lap in the car while we were in. Just some of that is like verbatim from what she was
Yeah.
saying about how much culturally it's just so fragmenting, having to deal with the
Mm.
banking and the medication and coordinating the medical team and all that while she was, you know, being with her
Yeah.
mom. But then also and the sadness, like not wanting her to go. And then also the moment that her mom really only had 2 or 3 days left, I think, and managed to kind of, I imagine, I'm not sure if that's me imagining, but like crawling up the stairs to see the moon together.
Mm.
That's in there. So I have not had that experience.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I have in a way
Mm-hmm.
by being with her in it and by being human, like it's somehow in there.
Yeah.
So there's something that's less personal
Mm-hmm.
feeling than just like a memoir, and that feels important.
Yeah. I think for me, when you said you haven't had that experience, it popped up into my head, but Gertrude has, almost in this way of
Yeah.
like, and you have obviously in the way that you were with her, but that it gave me more context for like what and who Gertrude might actually be. It's like this embodiment
Hmm.
of these
Hmm.
practices that your
Yeah.
community has, but also just in general that we in the world. It's like as she is sort of uncovered or drawn, or discovered, right? Like it sort of like
Hmm.
shows
Hmm.
what these experiences are. That she is already here because we all are. And I was thinking
Yeah.
about you collecting basil also, and just this. I'm obsessed with this book. Still reading forever, but Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about whether your garden loves you, and it made
Mm.
me wonder if Gertrude has that capacity, or what you might think about that, the love that she might have.
Yeah, totally. I even feel like she's kind of a place of loving.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be a place of lovingness where of being
Yeah.
touched, whether by nature or by human. I mean, humans are part of nature, so including the human parts of
Mm-hmm.
nature or otherwise, or whether it's the silence, and it's an unguarded point.
Mm-hmm.
And by being just an unguarded point, like a something small, it has a lot of room for what's great in what's already here.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's part of the thing too, is like leaving a lot of room for what's great to be great. I mean, in terms of greatness,
Yeah.
like the night sky,
Mm.
mystery of, and also whatever it is that beyond biology allows this the weird functioning of this human being between birth and death,
Um,
and somehow echoes beyond birth and death.
I am wondering if, like, what your hopes for the book are, if you have any.
I have a kind of practice to curtail hope. And I had a really interesting experience with this last night and today, because the printing company has been delayed. Um, and yesterday they sent an incorrect message to someone who's on the team. that the Out of Nowhere book was ready, like it had been printed, was getting trimmed, would be going out soon. But the person said the other two projects won't be ready till late January after our Christmas break. And I was like, what? Because Gertrude was ready before Out of Nowhere. Like, why would she be read? Why would she actually? She was approved. The proof was approved a week before Out of Nowhere, and so why would she be that delayed? And what's going on? And that helped me come into contact with where there was some hoping going on, like tying something to some future outcome that actually I didn't is not like a real heartfelt point for me.
Yeah.
But that was like a tying on to some suffering. So it allowed me to just like disentangle from that. And then today was like, oh, well, that was actually a mistaken message. And both books are going to be ready tomorrow if all goes well. And going like shipping tomorrow, the next day. Finally, they should still arrive before Christmas. So, but it was a very cool little bit, almost like a mini birthing process to like shed where I had imagined this or that, like, and what that meant also for me, feeling that people had trusted me to enter a pre-sale agreement, but with the idea the book should be arriving in the near future and not like in the following calendar year. And so it's kind of like, okay, so we can just write everybody and offer refunds if needed. And, I guess I need to find a different printer or a different way to do this. Like it kicked me into like, this is pretty tenuous here, isn't it? So maybe I need to think about, I need to investigate, research, find someone who has more expertise to tell me like, what other options are there? Like what would be a publishing house that would take this kind of book, and deal with, it's been so much work. Like, so people said, oh, self-publishing, that's so much work. And I was like, oh, no. But it has been. So that was also good. And also setting it like kind of amping up a little bit on the like, oh, I would be willing now, or maybe not right now, but like at some point to try to find some help to see some other avenues, and also setting it down as like, my feeling is I've kind of done my work for now, and I'm just enjoying that feeling, and it's not in my hands. I can do what's in my hands, which would be offering people the chance to cancel if they needed it by a certain date. And we're still in time because they haven't shipped the books. So, so that was a really cool. So about hope. But I can also, in a more, just using hope in a more colloquial way rather than in this like specific on the spiritual path. Hope is like tied to fear and the future, and it's not a real place to actually restfully be and live. But in a colloquial, like, oh, what do you hope? Like, what might be good about this book being in the world? I think it's where people might resonate with that, and that might help people more in their own embodying, their own confidence, tenderness, spaciousness, connection, that lovingness, the point somewhere that people maybe sometimes call heart, or Buddhists call emptiness, or pragya, wisdom. Pragya is a great word, beyond knowing, literally, pragya. So also, like, all of that kind of pointing towards one little tiny humble confidence place of lovingness in ourselves. And also to be inspired in their own juicy creativity, playfulness, like, oh, well, that's not much, I could do that. Yeah, you can, please do. Draw a character with simple shapes, or copy Gertrude, even, like, whatever, but that's it. I'm really enjoying how art as such it's an embodied process. You're using your body to make marks on a physical surface, and then even if that gets translated through digital technology back to a physical surface again, hopefully, I hope that carries through there. The embodying and carrying the seed of lovingness that's in us and letting that amplify and to enjoy that, to have permission to trust lovingness,
Mm-hmm.
or to trust like being consciousness and whatever expression comes through there, the giving and receiving that happens in that unguardedness.
Yeah.
Like, so sharing that space through, I think actually through images is maybe more effective than with words. So the proportion of word to image is, there's way more image than word. I mean, not if you count them, maybe there's more words by number than,
Sure.
but yeah, the visual space is more image. And I could say colloquially, I'm hoping that can carry
Mm-hmm.
permission to trust, lovingness, consciousness, pragya, what's already here that we don't have to make up or hold up or convince ourselves or anybody else of, and just a naturalness that's trustworthy and really, and wow, it's trustworthy and wow, and wow.
There's one last question, and I haven't
Mm-hmm.
told you this, but there's a coffee shop that is just so beautiful, and it's a little bit far from where I live, so I only go there sometimes. And I go infrequently enough that I forget that there's a road that has the longest stoplight in the world, and the cross street is Gertrude Street.
Oh, really?
And so I just sit and I think of you. Very infrequently this happens, but I go to this coffee shop because I'm so excited about this serenity, and I have my book, and I want to just sit there, and they make delicious coffee, and it's got these lights and outside, and it's California, and it's a dream. But I always forget that I'm going to sit and think about Gertrude for at least 5 minutes and you. And it's this beautiful meditation, but it makes me always want to know. I always want to, well, two things I want to do. I want to steal the sign and send it to you, which I won't do. But I also want.
You can take a rubbing. You can take a rubbing of it.
But I also want to ask where the name came from and how
it came out of it. Yeah.
Say again?
Yeah. It just came. Within a few days, like within the first week or maybe 2 weeks, it seemed like much longer because I was drawing her a lot, trying out different activities, and it was a time where I really needed that hand to paper practice to stay sane. And it was just fascinating to feel her developing. And then all of a sudden, and that drawing is also in the book, where she's kind of sitting, I think, kind of like this. And it just, my hand wrote that, my name is Gertrude, like it or not. And it was cool that it came that way, because it could easily be like, but why Gertrude? What about, like trying to fiddle with it with something that just came out whole onto the page.
Okay.
So I'm also curious. Because it struck me later that my kids both have names, that start with G and have some similar sounds. So there may be something in me that needs or loves that, something about those sounds, I guess. But it was not a thinking process. What shall I call her?
Yeah.
It just came. I guess there started to be an opening of like, I wonder if there's a name for this character. I'm not sure that I would have necessarily known a gender until the name. And I still feel, Gertrude is a more feminine name, but I like also that a feeling of whatever kind of being she is. I'm not sure what they have about gender, so that's fun. But yeah, like that.
Cool.
Within I think a few days, at most a week, which felt like about a month at the time. It felt like I was getting to know her a lot before her name. Sometimes, but when I can, just keep on. Okay. Oh, you don't hear me? No? Oh. Did Coco step on a mute button? No, anyway. great day. Thank you.
Tender fire.